So a lot has gone on in these last 2 weeks. Last week, I was in Winnipeg, where it's cold and snowy, to go visit my uncle, who's an important person to me growing up, and he has lung cancer, and he's currently in the hospital. So that was something. And I also met with my cousins, which is fun, and my extended family, which comes with some extra baggage. And the week before that, I moved into this place with this lovely abstract sculpture here sitting. And yeah, it's not quite complete, but I'm working on it. But that made the last couple of weeks particularly stressful. Yet, it's an interesting test for myself, so I kind of wanted to break it down. I think that the whole moving experience tired me out, but it was kind of in a good physical way. Like I had to go run around and drive back and forth in my tiny little Fiat and two-seater car to move as much stuff as I could. And yeah, that was tiring. I was lucky I had a friend, and he drove his bigger car down to help me move my bed and some other stuff and do a couple of loads. Because without that, I would have had to drive back and forth a hell of a lot more. But that whole experience was, yeah, kind of exhausting. And I wish I kind of did it differently. I wish I just got a big ass van or truck or whatever, and then just had all my boxes ready and loaded it up and did it in a trip. But I had to be stubborn and kind of just do it, hoping I can figure it out, which luckily it did work out. But yeah. And then my friend also came back and helped me pick out a lovely couch, which is where all of these boxes come from. But right in the middle of that, it was, time to head on the flight to Winnipeg. So I had to prepare for that. I guess both in terms of packing stuff and actually being emotionally ready, because I didn't really know what was going to happen. Normally, when I go visit Winnipeg to see my uncle and my aunts and my cousins and some other people, but mainly my uncle, I tend to just stay over at his place. Both of his daughters have moved out, so they have a lot of space in their bigger house. And I always enjoyed that. It was cozy and comfortable, even if the bed was, off and on sometimes. The space was always comfortable because I grew up there and stayed over there for many different years, with my own immediate family and on my own afterwards. So I knew all about it. We would wake up and we'd huddle around our little kitchen island and chat or don't chat and make tea, or my uncle would make coffee, even though they didn't have a coffee machine or coffee filters. He would use a tissue paper, kind of put it in a little cup and sort of strain it that way, just because I wanted coffee. It would be nice just hanging out there. My uncle would take me on some random drive as I was growing up in my teens and my 20s and 30s to give me space to talk. It was interesting because he was the only one who really did that in my family growing up. Take me all over the city. Some of the first times was just kind of going to Tim Hortons to grab a coffee, but he would drive me to Assiniboine Park, or he would take me to, I don't know, like the Forks or some other remote park that he knew of. It was like a reserve, I believe. And one time, more recently, in the last 5 years or something, in the last few visits, he drove me out, way out of town, and I've never been there before. And we ended up at this little, like, stone church with a cemetery next to the river. It was really beautiful. But the reason why he takes me out on these trips is to give me space to talk. He wants to be able to listen and understand what's going on in my life and all the ups and downs and all the hard feelings that I've had. And I think that's because he somehow relates to that feeling that I have. while he was in the hospital, I he was talkative and energetic enough that I could chat with him for a bit. And we kind of had our little small talk, and he talked about his Buddhism and ego and psychology and all that stuff. But I had a chance to ask him all those years ago when I was just like a little boy, like in my early teens, maybe like 12, 13, 14. He pulled me aside when my family was visiting and sat me in the kitchen and just talked to me, probably about weird philosophy and political stuff that I probably didn't understand. But that started something. And so I asked him why he did that all those years ago. And basically just cut straight through and said that I looked lonely. And I don't think I knew it at the time, but it's true. I was always lonely. I kind of took care of myself. My parents have an older brother and a younger sister too. Like my parents provided, but I generally had to do a lot of things on my own, like schooling. And when I started watching movies, as a kid, we would watch all the same blockbuster movies. But eventually, I got really into renting very particular, award winning dramas and experimental stuff and anime. And I couldn't get anyone to watch them with me because they thought it was boring. So I basically spent the second half of my childhood watching things and playing games on my own. So, in a sense, in my family, I have always been alone. I'm not part of the whole Winnipeg extended family. My family is separate, and we grew up in Calgary. And within my family, I was always the, typical middle child, um, that gets neglected, but it was even more than that in some ways. But I guess my uncle recognized that, and I appreciate that he saw that and took the step to do something. Maybe in some sense because he relates to it. I've only learned a little bit about him in his past in Vietnam, not very thoroughly, but he went through a lot, and maybe he also felt like he didn't fit into his family. Because while we were on the hospital bed, he said to me that we're all alone, and we are born alone, and we die alone, and we can breathe on our own, and our heart beats on our own. Nobody else can do that for you, which is technically true, but I think somehow that says more about how he sees things, because I don't fully agree with that. I think that there's some truth to that. Like, we do have to do a lot to take care of ourselves. But at the same time, we are very connected to one another, and we take care of each other in different ways. My cousins and aunts and uncles actually kind of showed me, but more so my cousins, because they keep in touch with one another because they all grew up in Winnipeg and there were multiple families. And I think I'm kind of jealous or envious of that in some way, because my family was kind of isolated in their own city. It was too bad that I didn't have other cousins and stuff around, to bounce things off of and to sort of emotionally regulate and get different perspectives and things. So I think that's why I've always went back to Winnipeg to see my uncle and to see my cousins, because I get to see something different, a version of family that's outside the version that I was kind of forced to grow up, and I had really no other choice. So my uncle provided me a lot with that space, and I think maybe because he felt alone, he also connected with me in that way. So whenever we stayed over at his house, or when I stayed over at his house, yeah, I liked waking up and just sitting around on their couch, looking through their little library of books. There's way too many books; I can't read them all. And yeah, he would take me out. Maybe my aunt would take me out for lunch too, and she'd be the one who tells me more about the family history and even more about my own immediate family and how my parents ended up together and stuff like that. Because my parents actually wouldn't talk about it. As the night kind of wears on, I would just sit in the living room while my uncle sits in his little chair on the side here, and yeah, we discussed things into the night. He'd tell me about Vietnam and political stories, or try to instill his Buddhist wisdom on me. I don't know, it's a lot of different feelings. And it was cold and snowy, and I ended up staying at an Airbnb instead because I didn't know if his daughters would want to stay in the house, or his immune system was too weak, or whatever. But he ended up in the hospital anyways. I couldn't even visit him at the house. And it's all a little bit confusing. And after that whole thing of running around for 5 days, I came back here, and then I'm starting to like rebuild my place again and try to come up with a new way of living here. So it's been a lot. Yeah, I think I'm kind of at a cross section of my life where it's kind of like, here's all of the past stuff and how I grew up in Calgary, and my first relationship, and kind of meeting my uncle and spending time with him, and leading up to this point where now I'm middle aged and I'm in a new city, and I just moved to a new place, and my uncle might be gone later this year. And so, yeah, it's this sort of intersection where I don't know what the future will hold, but something's different. Something will change. I've been on this journey of trying to become more independent and figuring out my way. And my uncle has helped me a lot with that, sort of building out this reflective sort of maturity. And now that he's kind of on his deathbed, I feel like I guess I'm gonna be that lonely boy again. But I have all of this extra compassion and love and skills and like capabilities that now I have to take care of myself. Maybe for the first time in my life, I kind of feel like an adult. It's weird to think that it took this long. Like, you're supposed to be an adult after you're 18 or 20s or whatever, but honestly, in your 20s and 30s, if anyone was that age, you really are just figuring things out, and you're stumbling along the way out in the world. And only now I feel like I'm starting to understand what I want and how to make the right decisions to just kind of get there. But it feels like a interesting crossroads, and who knows where it'll lead. But I'm liking this new place, and I'm hopeful, but I'm also sad. I guess I kind of have to grieve in my old life, and for my uncle, and for maybe the family that I'm leaving behind. a lot of other things potentially. But at the same time, I'm excited to sort of rise from the ashes and become somebody new. Yeah, we'll see where that leads. But hopefully, the next time I try making one of these videos, the place will be more complete. And until then, I guess I'll see you next time.